Hi guys, Oscar here, back with another video, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a PC from scratch. So here's just a quick info about the parts that I've used, and I'll show you why I've chosen them. So firstly, here we got the CPU. It's the Ryzen 7 and it's the 2700 model. So the reason why I've chosen this is because of its 8 cores. And by the way, the computer that I'm building is for my dad, and he's using it for productivity tasks and not that much gaming. So I've gone for this because this is quite strong like workstation task kind of processor, not really gaming, because it has all those cores in it. So with the RAM, I've gone with Corsair LPX. This is the 2 times 4 GB sticks, so plenty of RAM there. And then this is the SSD. I've gone with a 500 GB model from Western Digital. They're quite reliable. I would always recommend getting your storage devices off reliable companies, because if you don't, they will probably break and you'll lose all your data. So this is wireless networking. The motherboard that I bought didn't support wireless networking, and my dad wanted it, so I just threw in this wireless network adapter that was about 10 quid from Amazon. And the graphics card, I'm using the Radeon 5, I think it's 550 X something. This card is not the best. It's quite an old card, but it will still get through tasks quite well. And it's 4 GB. It has 4 GB memory, so it's quite good. The cooler, I've gone with an AIO, that's with 2 fan radiator, so quite a lot of cooling performance there. Also, I'm planning to overclock this CPU here, so to get extra performance out of this, and then I can use the AIO to cool that. With the motherboard, I'm going with ASRock. This is a mini ITX board, and it offers quite a few features, and the reason why I bought this was because it was under £50, so it was pretty cheap, but with good features, and ASRock is a trusted company, so it shouldn't break or do anything like that. And finally, it's power supply. I've gone with the Corsair because of their reliability. 450 watts model, so that'll be plenty to supply to especially our graphics card and CPU. And then finally, this case, it may not look like it, but it only cost me like £39, and it's full tempered glass. It doesn't have any fans in it, so I found this fan here just randomly. This is 220 fans. So if you're going to get this case, you need to get fans, or at least one fan. And because I've got this AIO cooler, I can fit it to the top of the case, and then this fan can go to the front, so we've got airflow coming from the front, and then it will exhaust out the top. So that's quite another way of cooling, instead of just coming from here and exhausting out the back, because at the moment I don't have a back exhaust fan, which would be something that I would recommend, but I just didn't have any fans lying about. So, let's get building this system. So before you even start building your computer, you first need to de-staticize yourself, especially when you're working with the motherboard, because you can possibly damage it and break it. So how you do that is you just touch some metal object in your house. I would recommend a radiator or something that goes into the ground to earth yourself, to stop static electricity from going from that you had stored in you into the motherboard and breaking it. So I've de-staticized myself, so now I can open the motherboard box. So if you don't have a motherboard workstation like I don't, just use your motherboard box because that is actually anti-static. So you shouldn't have any trouble with that. So place your motherboard carefully on this board. I'm going to install the CPU. Here's the CPU and the CPU sticker. You just open this like kind of plasticky thing. This will be in Intel and AMD CPUs. And also notice that the pins, there's lots of tiny pins on the bottom of AMD CPUs. Try not to bend any of these because then the CPU would not work. So carefully lift the CPU out and remember to hold it by the sides like I'm doing, because if you touch the pins you're likely to bend them and then ruin the CPU. And if you touch the heatsink spreader thing, you will stop your skin oils will stop thermal distribution through the CPU and possibly affect how your CPU cools in a negative way. So now what you want to do is you want to see this lever in your motherboard, so just flick that up like this, and then notice that there is a little arrow on your CPU just here. This should line up with an arrow here, or another way of doing it is the Ryzen label here should go with the top of the CPU like this. So you don't need to put any force, you just need to drop it in like so, just there. So once it feels like it's in, just give it a little wiggle just to check that it is in, and then close the latch. You don't have to put any force on the CPU. And there. So now you've got your CPU installed. So now the next thing that we need to install, or I'd recommend installing, is the RAM here. So what I'm using, and I'm sure I've already told you, is this Corsair Vengeance stuff. RAM is pretty self-explanatory to install. You just have as many sticks as you need of this RAM, and make sure that these latches here are up, so clicked open. On this particular motherboard there's just one latch on each RAM stick. Sometimes motherboards have two, but this one just only has one. So once you've done that, you can just slot your RAM stick through into the onto the motherboard with some force, but you don't need too much. Just check that it's in, and then you can install the other RAM stick. So just to bear in mind, also there's a little notch here, and basically it's not in the middle, so you'll know exactly, and that lines up with a notch in the motherboard, so you know which way to put the RAM in. Also, if you're using dual channel memory, which I'm doing, read the motherboard's guide to check where you're going to put your RAM, because it does matter to where you're putting your RAM. But because my my motherboard only has 2 RAM slots, and I've only got 2 RAMs, I'm just going to put the RAM in both of them. And yeah, so if you are unsure about putting your RAM arrangement, just check your motherboard manual because it will be in there. So now you want to install your SSD. So how you install that is you have to know where your M.2 slot is, and that's here. And note that in some motherboards this will be hidden by some heatsink shrouding, but with this one it is not. So if it is, you will have to unscrew that to access the M.2 port. Just tip it out, and then, like the CPU, hold it by the sides, not the top or the bottom. And then locate where your M.2 slot is, and then just slot it in there. So it should be, you should slot it in from kind of an angle, because it should be slot in from like an angle. And then once it's got in, you need to push it down. I'm going to turn the motherboard around so you can see. So I've slotted it in from an angle here, and then I have to push it down. And this is where the screw that you found in your motherboard comes in very handy. And just screw it tight. Don't screw it too tight, but just make it snug, because this thing won't need that much screw tightness to not come out. So once you've done your SSD, your CPU, and your RAM, your motherboard's good to go. The last thing that you could need, because if you were going to do a air cooler, you would put it on now, and you need to refer to, this is the only step in this build tutorial that you'll have to work out yourself, because depending on your air cooler, they'll all have different instructions. Some use these mounting pins that are always here, some use a completely different custom system. So what I'm now going to do is I now need to put the custom mounting system of my cooler onto here, because it doesn't use the things that are already here. Next, grab your cooler. I'm just going to put that here, and then open it, I guess. So all these coolers will come with some kind of mounting mechanism to your CPU. So I'm just going to install this first, so I don't have to install it when it's in the case. So how you install an AIO is, if you are using one, if you're using a just a normal heatsink with the fan, you'll have to refer to the instructions. But this is a tutorial on how to install the AIO that I'm using here. So if you're using this AIO, I'll link it in the description, because it was only £49. Then this is the tutorial how to fit it on to the CPU. So this is a Ryzen CPU. So I've taken out these Ryzen brackets and all these mounting hardware that you'll need to install it. Notice which way you want to install this. So because I want this logo to be not upside down, I'll have to install it this way. So these pipes are coming out on the side where the RAM is going to be. So if I look corresponding to where I'm going to mount it, these things here, I'll have to put this on this side of the thing.
So how to mount it, it's just these little screws here, and then you just screw these into these threaded holes. Okay, so I've got the AO pump and block installed, mounting hardware installed. So now I need to locate all 4 of these kind of like screw things and mount them onto here. Note that that there's 2 threads that come out of here, and the bigger one goes onto the motherboard's threads, and the smaller one attaches the pump, the AO, to it. So if you just thread these on, they don't need to be that tight, just finger tight. So now what I have to do is I lift the adhesive kind of label thing that was on the copper bit that contacts the CPU off the thing, and then this is where, because this particular one doesn't have pre-applied thermal paste, you will need to get some of that as well. So when you've located your thermal paste tube, by the way, I'm using Arctic thermal paste. I recommend this. I've used this in quite a few builds, and this one's the 65 gram one, so it's quite, and it's good. It's not that expensive, so it's quite good value. So how you would apply this is, for AMD CPUs, I would do the P-size thermal paste globule, and then because with Intel the heatsink is smaller, I would do a rice-sized globule of thermal paste. So now I would recommend smearing the thermal paste through, so just using some kind of item that has a flat surface, just to spread it through the CPU, just to make good thermal contact with everything. And you just want a kind of thin layer of it just everywhere. So once you've gotten like most of the heatsink covered with thermal paste, you can now attach your AO pump. So make sure it's the right way round, so the writing on the top is going to be on the top of your motherboard, so it's the right way round, and also make sure that any like fan header or pump header is untethered on this, and then you can just place it down. So when you got it placed down, these screws here you're going to use, and then these you just thumb tighten down onto the motherboard. Once those are relatively tight, just give your AO a little bit of a wiggle, just to check that it's securely on. Mine is, and I just take the radiator out of the bag. So now you want to you plug in your pump into your because on some motherboards there will be just a CPU fan header, or a dedicated CPU pump, but the one that I'm using doesn't have that feature, so just plug it into the pump header, the fan header I mean. So like so. So once you've done that, you're now ready to put your motherboard into your case now.
So for this part of the build, you're going to need your case, obviously. So how you access the motherboard mounting area is you need to turn your case round to the front, or whichever to the front, and then unscrew it. So this can either be, there can either be 2 screws here and here, or you can have thumb screws at the front if you have a tempered glass panel, which I do, meaning you just have to undo this case here and just gently slide. If you have a tempered glass panel, be really careful with it. There's also accessories kit, so if you see one of these, just take it out, because you'll need this because of all this screw. Before you even put them on board, you need to get your ARO shield. That comes included with your motherboard pack, and then just clip it the right way up into the space where your IO ports should be. So once it should just click in, and once you've done that, you're ready to go with mounting your motherboard. So it should align with these mounting pins here, the holes, and there. So once you've done that, the other screws will be much easier because you've got a hold on it. So once you've attached the fans onto your radiator, you want to attach the radiator onto your computer case. So how you do this is you get these tiny screws here, and you like there's screws here, and then you get a screwdriver, and you just thread these through. So once you've attached the radiator to your computer, next up you need to attach the fans to your motherboard so you can control them externally. You can control them through your motherboard or through some kind of software. So you just thread that through, possibly the other one. You plug that in, and then you come around the back, and then you pass your cable, your 2 fan cables, through the inside of your case, and then you attach them, and then you've got kind of a cleaner look stuff. So if I turn the case around, you've got all this kind of I/O to power these buttons at the top. So you've got USB 3, audio, USB 2, and all this power and reset stuff. So here's a close-up of the motherboard. So as you can see, you've got your power pins, your USB 3 and your USB 2 things here. So when you want to come around the back of your case and post, well, I would start off with your USB 3 because that's the easiest. So you want to post your USB 3 through here, this bit of your case, and then plug
your USB 3 into your USB 3 header. So that one is this one here, or should be this one. Yeah, and then you want to hide that as much as possible. So now you want to plug in your USB 2. The USB 2 port is right here, I think. So you thread it through here and then into there. Okay, so once you've done that, you want to get your audio port. So that one is down here, I think. And then this just goes through here and plugs simply into these pins here. There. So now what you've got left is this port here. So this is the fan port if you were going to use case fans, but we're not going to use that, and also the fan port is already taken up, so sadly we can't use that, but it doesn't really matter too much. So now we got all. Last thing that we need to do is we got all of the power cables. Because my camera is so bad, it wouldn't allow you to see the I/O ports in detail. So the picture on screen shows you a map of where to put all of the power reset, hard drive LED, and button LED on the. So if you follow the guide on screen. So once you've installed or connected all of the wires from your ports to the motherboard and all of your fans wires to the motherboard, you want to connect the power supply. So with the power supply, you need, or in the power supply box, you'll find the power supply itself. You'll find a pack of screws which you will need, so just set them aside, and you'll also find your power cable, so just set that aside just somewhere for later use, because of course you will need that. So on most low-end power supplies, they'll just come wrapped in bubble wrap, so if you just unwrap the bubble wrap, you'll find just the normal power supply. So, and then also, if you unwrap all these wires before you put it in, so you don't have to fiddle around in the case when it's in there. So just unwrap that, and then connect it to this fan. It depends. So if there's no air intake on the bottom of the case, you want the fan going up, but because there's an air intake here, I'm going to put my fan going down. So just put the power supply like that, and then this is where these screws come in useful. So you should find 4 of them, and this is how you attach the power supply to the case. The wires that you would want to be focusing on, firstly, is your motherboard wire. So just plug this in as you go. So the motherboard wire will go through this hole here. Okay. If I turn it round, the motherboard wire slots in to the 12 pin or 24 pin power, motherboard power connector. So now you want to find the CPU connector. So the CPU connector should be somewhere here. It's this one that's labelled CPU here. So because my motherboard is only a single 4-pin CPU, you want to split this in half and put this through here, this side, the top here I mean, and then on the other side. So the last thing that you need to add into your system are your graphics card, and if you have one, a Wi-Fi card. So if I was you, I would put in the graphics card. Here's the actual card. Make sure to remove all of this kind of like plastic wrap before you put it into your card, otherwise it could melt and then that would be bad. Also make sure that you remove, we'll just keep these in. So how you install your graphics card is you want to install it upside down kind of in a way, and first you click the clip on your top slot, PCIe slot of your motherboard, and then what you need to do is you need to make room for it. You need to take out some of the things on the back here. So the ones that I will have to take out to get. Once you've gotten those two things out, you can finally put your graphics card in. So just take this thing out here and then just slide it carefully in. Again. Close the word carefully. And try not to bend these things, the slots, otherwise you'll have trouble getting the card in like I'm having now, because I accidentally bent my slot a little bit. Okay, so now that this card is into the, it's kind of in. Now what you need to do is you need to get one of these big screws and screw this tightly in. There. So now you've installed your graphics card, and just give it a little wiggle, just check that it's in. Now you need to install a Wi-Fi card if you have bought one. So how you do that is basically the same thing as your video card. Just take your Wi-Fi card here. Note that to install the Wi-Fi pins after you've put it in, and not before. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to fit it in. So just slide it in to, this time, to the half-size PCIe slot here, and just slot that in, and use another one of the screws, these big long screws, just to tighten it. And so once you've done that, you need to check that your card doesn't have any kind of extra power delivery on it. You can see here that it doesn't, so we don't need to connect it to the power supply. So once you've put your cards in, you need to do now is you need to cable manage. I would recommend cable managing, because if you want to upgrade or change something in the future, it'll be much easier to do that, because then your cables, instead of looking like this, they'll look neat and tidy, and you know where everything is. So firstly, just push all the cables that you're not going to use just in to this kind of crevice close here, so they're all hidden and tucked away. So next, you want to use some of these zip ties that were included in the thing, just to zip your wires, the cables together. So you might need to double them up, like in some bits, because there might be too many cables, and the length of the cable tie might not be significant to loop around all of them. System's been kind of cable managed to slide the back panel on now. So if you cable manage your system properly, your panel should slide on pretty easily. I'm sliding it on the wrong way, so that's the reason why it's not. There. So my panel slid on relatively easy. And then you just screw these screws back on, and then you do the other panel. But first, peel away any plastic that still remains, so like that, and I think that's it. Your panel back on to your case. So in my case, it's this tempered glass panel. Again, remove any like warning stickers like this one. Just, well, partly for aesthetics and partly, yeah, basically for us. Or maybe keep that on to warn people of tempered glass, I guess. So that's going to put a load of stains on the glass annoyingly. So I wouldn't put all the screws on, I'll just put a few screws on, because if there's something wrong with the computer and you need to troubleshoot it, you'll need to open it back up again. So just to put about two screws instead of 4. So now let's test it. So the system has been built, so let's see if it actually turns on. So here is a memory stick that has the Windows boot thing on it. So if I plug this in, this will download Windows onto this system. So all I have to do is plug in this. By the way, I'll leave a link to how to download the Windows 10 file onto a memory stick so you can put it onto your PC. This will be an unactivated version of Windows, and you'll have to buy the activation code. So I've put the memory stick in. So now I've turned on the system, and let's see if we get a boot. So over here we can see that we've got an ASRock boot sign, now a Windows symbol. So that means that the computer's picked up the memory stick and is booting with it. So it looks all good. So I'll set up Windows. As you can hear, the fans are a bit noisy, so I'll have to slow them down. Please remember to like and subscribe, because this video took a lot of time and effort to make. Thanks.